Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our book club meeting. We are so excited tonight because we're going to be discussing The Winemaker's Wife with Kristin Harmel, but we have a surprise guest who we are so excited is joining us tonight. So let me introduce to you first New York Times bestselling author, podcast host, and co-creator of Friends in Fiction that we all love so much, Patty Callahan Henry. Yay!
Hi, guys. I'm so happy to be here. I don't think it's much of a surprise who I am. I just follow Kristin everywhere. And then when they say Kristin's on tonight, I'm like, well, then so am I.
It's weird, you guys. I can't shake her. I don't know. Whatever. I'm the one wearing like Patty Callahan hair, and you're the one wearing like Kristin Harmel hair.
I know.
Tonight, so.
I brushed my hair tonight.
That's so funny. Well, Patty, would you like
please give us a sneak peek of Surviving Savannah that we are so excited?
I would love to. So I'm not going to take up very much time. Oh, look, I feel like I want to take a screenshot.
I'm so sad.
It'll come tomorrow.
It'll be there, I promise. I don't know why yours didn't show up yet.
That's so weird.
This is Kristin's night, so I'm going to make this super quick, but I am going to preview how much fun we're going to have when it's time for book club for Surviving Savannah. So imagine it's a balmy summer morning, June 13th, 1838. You're on a wharf in Savannah. You're with all of your family. All 11 of you are boarding this ship to go north for the summer. You have your trunk of gold and silver because it's 1838. So you don't have money, you don't have credit cards. You have all your fine silver, all of your fine china, all of your best dresses. You set off for what you think is going to be a leisurely trip at sea on an elegant steamship with only one night at sea. That's what they promise, one night at sea. But off the coast of North Carolina at 11:04 p.m., one of the boilers of the steamship empties out, and the engineer fills that boiling hot boiler with cold water and creates a bomb. The steamship explodes, and for the next 45 minutes, you and your family are fighting for your life. That is what got me into this story. When I discovered about this shipwreck, and I found this family of 11 who all boarded this ship together, some of them making it on lifeboats, some of them making it onto random pieces of floating ship, some of them who perished, some who survived. When I discovered what some of them did with their lives after living and what the ones who had perished could have done, I asked myself, how do we survive the surviving? What do we do? And who knew how relevant this would be to 2020 and 2021? What do we do with our lives after the tragedy? So I follow these families, and I was about 3 weeks into writing this book, 3 weeks, when I stumbled on a headline that said, Pulaski found by Endurance Exploration, 100 feet deep, 30 miles off the coast of North Carolina. And that is what started this novel.
Oh my gosh, that was like
chills.
I know, me too. That was like the best introduction ever. That was so good.
That was a total wing it.
I know.
Oh my gosh,
many of us were just going at the edge of our seat.
Oh.
Yeah, so I tell it from three women's point of view. I have two women on the ship. One is the sister of that family, and one is the niece of that family, because I want all the shipwreck books are told by men. I wanted this to be told from their point of view. And then a modern day woman in Savannah right now. You learn a lot about the past of Savannah and the now of Savannah. And she is a museum curator, because once I discovered that they were bringing up the treasure and the artifacts, I knew we would want to see them. So.
Oh my gosh. And it is such a good book. I was lucky enough that I got to read it, gosh, a few months ago. Because
I was going to say really early. Yeah.
Really,
It still
really
had
early.
mistakes in it. Yeah.
But oh my gosh, I mean, just the storyline was so beautiful and so inspiring. And like you said, just so perfect for our times. So I've always really been fascinated by the Titanic and just sort of the tragedy and the human stories that go with the Titanic. But this was better because it's like
Huh.
you no, I'm serious, because it's like we already all know the story of the Titanic. We don't know this story. So it was this story being dredged up from the bottom of the sea and just touching our hearts at exactly the right time. So I'm so excited that you're going to get to share it with the book club. You're going to get to share it with friends in fiction. But I do want to say to anyone out there, if you're going to pick it up for book club, and I know you're coming to book club in April, right? It's mid-April, I think, is yours. You guys out there, if you're going to pick it up from book club, do think about ordering it early if you can. I know we say this occasionally on the show, and it's like a convoluted explanation, but it helps authors so much if you pre-order. So if it's a book you're going to get eventually and you love Patty, as we love Patty, consider ordering, from wherever you get your books. It doesn't have to be one of our weekly stores, or it could be one of our weekly stores with the discount, but such a good book. And I'm just so proud of you. I'm so proud of you, my friends.
It's time to talk about champagne. Okay,
Funny
I'll
you
leave,
should ask.
but there we
exactly. What?
What's
Bring
champagne?
on the fake champagne.
Champagne. All right, I'm gonna knock out, but I'm still gonna be on Facebook watching, and love you guys. I'll see
Love
you soon.
Love you.
Okay.
Bye,
See you
Patty. Thank you
Beautiful
so
book.
much for popping in.
Anytime. I'll follow Kristin and you, Brenda, and you, Lisa. Anywhere you want.
We follow you.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I love her. And the book is seriously so good. Have either of you started reading it yet?
Not yet.
Not
I'm
yet.
planning to start it soon. I probably will start this weekend so I can just dive in. But the cover
literally,
is just so
Oh,
beautiful.
It's gorgeous. It really is. I can't wait to hear what you two think about it. I think you're going to like it a lot.
Oh, I'm sure we
I'm
will.
so excited.
I can't wait.
Yay. Well, cool. Well, thank you for having her on. That was fun.
Oh, we're so glad she could join us. But we're going to switch gears a little bit and celebrate our own Kristin Harmel, who we love.
Thank you. Cheers.
And for those of you, yes, cheers.
Cheers.
And to those of you that are also drinking champagne, a lot of members said they were going to drink champagne or sparkling
Yay.
wine. Cheers to you too.
Cheers to all of you. Thank you all so much for being here, and thank you all for all the nice comments on well, I mean, gosh, over the last 11 months or whatever it's been, but also specifically for the book club page. You guys have been so supportive of this book and so enthusiastic, and I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. It's amazing.
Thanks.
Well, we want to tell our viewers, for those that don't know, just a little bit about you. And we'll get into questions for the book club discussion in just a moment. But if you do have questions for Kristin, you can leave them in the comment section. But we wanted to let you know that Kristin is the New York Times bestselling and USA Today and #1 international bestselling author of the Book of Lost Names, and tonight's topic, The Winemaker's Wife, and a dozen other novels that have been translated into 28 different languages. That just blows my mind. Kristin began writing professionally at the age of 16 as a sports writer, covering Major League Baseball and National Hockey League for a local magazine in Tampa Bay. But we know her best as one of the Fab Five, our friends in fiction authors that have brightened our Wednesday nights and our pandemic life. So
Aw.
thank you, Kristin, so much for joining us,
Thank
and my
you for
beautiful
having
co-host,
me.
Brenda.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. And none of us say it often enough, but we just appreciate what you two have done so deeply. I mean, you are
Oh,
over 4,000 members. This is such a great club. We were talking about it before we came on today, just how wonderful and active it is. And yeah, you two have just done such a great job at the helm. We're really proud to be working
Aw.
with you, and we're really grateful. Thank you.
thank you. We're such
Oh.
big fans of all of you, and
Yes.
my love for you, Kristin, has gone for years and years.
Well, likewise, Lisa. What did we just realize the other day? We've been Facebook friends for what is it now? 12 years?
12
12
years.
years.
I know,
I was
That's
so
awesome.
excited when that popped up on the timeline. I was just like, oh my goodness, this is perfect timing.
That's awesome.
Oh.
It all started with The Art of French Kissing.
It did, which just feels like a lifetime ago. But obviously, neither you nor I have aged since that picture. Clearly,
Oh no,
we
not
look
at all.
exactly the same. Yes,
I'm still 29.
yes, and I'm
Me
still
too.
whatever I was then too. Yeah, approximately 29. Yeah.
Right. Well, I got to tell you, Kristen, I had the winemaker's wife. It was just amazing. I know that you're going to give us a summary, but I just have to tell you, when I finished it, I was just so struck by. It was just an exquisite kind of intertwining of the relationships with people, and just so thoughtfully done. And I wanted, when I finished it, I wanted to go turn to someone and say, "Oh, I need to talk about this." And I was by myself. So I just wanted to tell you how much I thoroughly enjoyed the book.
Thank you. Oh,
And
that really means a lot. Thank you so much, Brenda. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
but some of our readers may not have read the book, but be tuning in anyway. So would you mind giving us just a taste of the book as we begin, before we begin our questions?
Actually, I would mind, because it's not going to be anywhere near as good as what Patty just came out with. Like, she did this chill-inducing scene setting. Mine's going to be like, well, this happens, then that happens. But so if you all promise not to compare me to the stunning Patty, yes. So so The Winemaker's Wife is the story of three women who are connected through their affiliation with a champagne house in Champagne, France, in the Champagne region of France, which is about an hour or so from Paris. So two women's storylines take place during World War II, and one is in the present day. And there are secrets and betrayals and lies involved in all three storylines. And it all involves a champagne house called Champagne Chauveau, or the Maison Chauveau, which is in a small town called Ville-d'Aumonge, which is a real place. The champagne house is fictional, but Ville-d'Aumonge is real. And when the Germans come to town, and this was sort of it was a real thing, the resistance became very active in the Champagne region. During World War I, the area had been completely decimated. 80% of the buildings had been destroyed. Vineyards had been completely wiped out for a generation. The front line during World War I actually ran right through Champagne for a while. It was just destroyed more than almost any other region of Europe. So when World War II came, very close on the heels of World War I think the people there were like, not again. This is not happening again. And so the resistance was very quick to form. And it is into this resistance, this world of resistance, that we meet Inez, who is the wife of the owner of Champagne Chauveau, and Celine, who is the wife of the head winemaker. They are very different women, and when tragedy comes to Champagne, when dark times come to Champagne, they turn in completely different directions for comfort. And they both make terrible decisions that lead to catastrophic consequences. And then in the present, we pick up the story and kind of resolve what happened in the past. So see, it wasn't nearly as good as Patty. I'm never letting her go before
No,
me
it was
again.
great.
It was fabulous.
Wait, can I start over? Set yourself in Champagne amid the
Wait,
I don't know. Is there a rewind button on
imagine.
this? Yeah, exactly. Imagine yourself in Champagne in the middle of a vineyard. It is 7:02 p.m. I can't do it. She was way better than me.
Oh, I think that was quite wonderful, and it really leads into a couple of different questions that people were really curious about.
Okay.
I guess what when you said the storyline is full of lies and deceit and secrets, did you find, what character did you find was the most difficult to portray in the book? And I'm asking this question on behalf of Irene Winter from the Advanced Questions.
Well, Irene, that is a great question. And it's one that I've even talked about during my tour for the Book of Lost Names. Because when I think back to all the books I've written, I would say that Inez in The Winemaker's Wife was one of the most difficult characters to write. Because she makes a lot of decisions that I hope I would not have made, especially at the beginning. She's very, how do I put it? She feels very trapped in her life. This isn't the life she expected. And although she's kind of trying to change, nobody around her is willing to accept that she's growing up and that she's trying and that she's bringing something to the table. And so she's finding herself backed further and further into a corner. And the more she's backed into a corner, the more she begins to make these decisions out of desperation, out of hurt, and out of just this sense of powerlessness. But they're the wrong decisions. They're selfish decisions. They're decisions that that hurt people, that hurt her, that hurt people close to her. And she was a very difficult character to write because I knew that there was something good about Inez. I knew that at her core she was good. Um, but I had to learn to fall in love with the flawed Inez at the beginning in order to be able to write her as a character that could go on a full arc of transformation. And that was hard for me. Usually in my novels, when I turn in my first draft to my editor, the biggest comment I get from her when she turns back the first draft, honestly, it's almost always in the very first paragraph of her notes to me. She always says, stop making your characters so perfect. And that's always the thing I have to address first. I have to have them, be more flawed or make more mistakes. She's like, everyone can't just be following the moral compass all the time. But Inez, when I turned this book in, Abby was like, yes, you finally you finally figured out how to write a flawed character from the start. You're learning. And I'm like, yes, I am. So that was difficult for me, but I think it made me a better writer.
Oh my goodness. Well, the interesting thing is it wasn't just Inez. I'm sorry. I have an Aunt Inez.
Maybe I'm saying it wrong. I don't know.
but it seemed like all of your characters in The Winemaker's Wife had just had flawed characters, and especially even in sort of a supporting character like Theo, he had his own issues and responsibilities of being involved with Celine and not, I guess, fulfilling his role in the way that you would hope that he would.
Yeah, no, that it's true. And again, going back to, I mentioned the Book of Lost Names a minute ago. One of the complaints I get about that book sometimes is that people don't like the mother because she doesn't kind of really grow and transform during the book. In The Winemaker's Wife, Theo's kind of the same. And actually, it didn't even occur to me until you just said that. But he is someone who wants to ignore that the war is there. And I think he feels like if he doesn't really pay attention to it, if he just keeps his head down and keeps doing the winemaking that he's good at, maybe he can just avoid it all. And of course that's not reality. So yeah, he was kind of he was a static character when the world around him was changing.
We have a comment from Carrie Soderman that goes along with that. She says, I love that none of the characters were without flaws.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and I agree.
I'll have to pass that on to my editor, who will be very proud of me. Look, they know that my characters are flawed, Abby. I did it. Thank you. That's a nice compliment.
I'm sorry, my dog was scratching at the door. I had it on mute.
Oh.
So to follow up with the Inez character, Marilyn Rump asked, what led you to create a character that couldn't redeem herself no matter how hard she tried? But she did evolve a great deal during the book. But did you realize that it was going to turn out the way it did when you were writing? I know that you're a plotter and not a pantser.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's get on that.
I knew that the core of the story, or really to me, the core of the story was Inez transforming. I mean, there are three main characters, Inez, Celine, and Liv. And the storyline is divided fairly equally among the three. I think I did it like a 1-2-3, 1-2-3 chapter pattern. So they really do all have mostly equal stories. But Inez was to me always the story that the whole book hinged on. Just because it's really her decisions that kind of propel everything else that unfolds in a way. And yes, I did know from the beginning the journey that Inez was going to go on. And I had to kind of, like I said, I had to figure out how to fall in love with a character who wasn't making good decisions and who wasn't acting from a good place and who was hurting people. And but I think being able to do that at the beginning let me know the ways in which she would grow. And I hope that therefore that trajectory felt realistic and satisfying on the page. I hope it did.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely it did. In fact, so real was it that I do have to get in one advanced comment more than a question, because
Sure.
it was so well said by Rhonda, and I hope I don't butcher your name, Parrott. But
Oh,
she
Rhonda.
says to Kristin, your art of allowing your readers to know your character so well is unmatched. I almost feel like I can feel their hearts beating. Do you base any of them on people you have met?
No. Oh my gosh, what a nice compliment. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
No, I don't really base them on people I've met. And I think that is maybe what allows me to dive a little bit deeper into them. I think if I was basing them on people I had met, I would be concerned about. I think I would be held back by two things. I would be held back by thinking, what would this actual real life person do in this situation? And I would never really know the answer, because you don't know everything that goes into making someone else tick. Like, even the person you're married to, or your child, or whatever, you don't know everything that goes on in their heart. So it's hard to say I know exactly what this person would do in this given situation. So I think that would have held me back. And then I also think if I had based them on real life people, I would be held back by thinking, well, what if this real life person reads the book and recognizes herself in the characters? And what if she's offended? Like, I think I would have worried a lot about that. So no, to me, developing characters is all about understanding their psychology, understanding maybe things that don't even make it into the book, things I know about their childhood, for example, that I just know in my head that'll never appear on the page. But to understand what made them who they are before page one helps me to make them, I think, hopefully more well-rounded, psychologically complete characters, if that makes sense. Although I will tell you, I've always, all of my books up until The Forest of Vanishing Stars, because I have not found a way to get this name in there, but all of my books, just since you asked about real people, have had two real names in them. Every single book has had a character named some version of Anne, after Anne Frank, because that was a really meaningful book to me in my life, and that's my way of honoring her. And every book has had a character named some version of James or Jay, or Cash, for my childhood best friend Jay Cash, who died in a car accident in 2003. So that's my way of kind of keeping him with me always, and letting his mom know that he's never forgotten. So those are the two real names that always find their way into my books.
Oh, that's so sweet.
That is so sweet and amazing.
Thanks.
Great way to honor them both.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And the names are just perfect for the characters involved. And I know a great deal goes into that, choosing your character names. Do you have any particular stories about choosing any of the characters in this book?
No, I think I liked the name Liv because there's some meaning to that at the end. I'm not going to say any spoilers, but someone says something to her at the end that kind of ties her name in a little bit. I liked that. No, I don't think I have a particular, not that I can think of. I don't think I can think of a particular name thing in this book. Names are a tricky thing for me because they have to feel exactly right. And not just to me, but to my editor. There was, in The Forest of Vanishing Stars, my book that comes out this summer, I had a name that was one of the main characters, that the entire time I was writing it, his name was Baruch. That was just what it was in my head. Baruch, that was who he was. And I turned it in, and my editor was like, that name is just not working for me. Like, he's kind of this strong, like, good-hearted, guy who kind of comes along. And so he ended up being Zeus, which is completely different. But like in my head,
wow.
isn't that crazy? Zeus, which is short for a Polish name, a Polish Jewish name, Zusia. But he goes by Zeus. But it's just funny. In my head, he was always and probably always will be Baruch. So names are weird. You have to kind of play around until it feels completely right.
Oh, absolutely. Well,
yeah,
they certainly do. By the time we readers get to be involved, they are just perfect.
Thank
Lisa,
you.
I bet there's some interesting things going on in the chat right now.
Yes, I have a question from the fabulous Patty Callahan Henry. She would like to know.
Oh, is she back to upstage me again?
She would like to know, what is your favorite champagne?
Ooh. Gosh, that's a great question. I don't really have a favorite. There was when I was researching this book in Champagne, I spent some time at a little champagne house in Ville d'Aumange. Because I went to a lot of the big champagne houses. I went to Veuve Clicquot. I went to Pommery. I went to just several of them. Ruinart. I never say them right. Ruinart. And that gave me a kind of a big understanding of what went on in Champagne. But I also needed to know what it would have been like in a tiny winemaking village and what would go on at a much smaller family owned champagne house. So there was this wonderful family that opened their champagne house up to me and welcomed me in and walked me all around and showed me everything and walked me to the caves and showed me the fields or the vineyards and all of that. But they're unfortunately not available yet in the United States. So I drank a lot of their great champagne in Champagne, but I haven't had it since. It was called uh, F. Bergerino Merion, which I say horribly.
Ooh.
My French accent is awful.
Oh.
But so that I would say, just for sentimental reasons, maybe they're my favorite. But um, for honestly, for good everyday champagne, and not every day, but I do believe that champagne shouldn't just be for the super special occasions. I think you should celebrate the small moments. And there is a site I use sometimes called WTSO, that occasionally has champagne that's like wine enthusiast rated or wine spectator rated on sale for about $20 a bottle, which is fantastic. So it's always smaller brands you've never heard of. But I've never had a miss there yet. So WTSO.com if anyone's interested in looking that up. That's where I get my Tuesday night champagne.
Oh, that's
Awesome.
hilarious.
Well, and let me just tell you, it ruins you for life to write a book about champagne. I mean, never do it. Like, because now I know. Now I'm like, oh, this is why this is so much. Like, this is why it costs a lot. It is exquisite. So, yeah, it was a great experience. But now I'll be poor for the rest of my life because I have to have a champagne budget.
Oh, that's funny. Well, speaking of champagne budget, we had we had one reader who asked, and I'm trying to find it, but she was curious about what the oldest vintage champagne you've had is.
Ooh,
Oh,
that is
that was Marilyn, wrong.
hey Marilyn. The oldest vintage champagne.
Because in the book, Inez drinks a vintage bottle of champagne from 1940, and of course, it was still
Yeah.
only that wasn't.
I don't think I've ever had anything super old. When I went to Champagne and I went to Ruina, um, I had a wonderful tour of the Champagne caves, the Clairière, with this woman who has what must be the best job in the entire world. She's the house historian for Veuve Clicquot, Ruina, and a couple of other brands. I mean, what an incredible job, right? Like her entire job is to talk to people about the history of champagne at their houses, which is awesome. But she and I did do a champagne tasting together, and I think we opened one that was older, but I don't think it was more than a decade old. It was not anything. I mean, you know what? I'm gonna have to have a bigger champagne budget if I'm gonna start getting into like the older champagnes. That's even a little too. It's too much for me right now. I need to have a couple more bestsellers under my belt before that happens.
Well,
And you will.
it really opened up a lot of interest, I think, in the readers in how the champagne is made and in the different houses,
That's awesome.
because the description of the caves and the role they played in the story was just amazing.
Well, thanks.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it was so interesting. And I loved the pictures that you shared, as well as the
Great.
articles about the difference between sparkling wine and champagne. Can you speak a little to that? Because some of our members, they saw it, but some people might have missed your post.
Yeah, it's and I would encourage you, anybody who didn't see it, maybe try to go back and find that, and maybe we can figure out a way to put it in announcements or something, because it's
Yeah.
explained better there. It's an article from Wine Folly, I think. It's explained better there than I will do here. But essentially, I think a lot of people think that champagne and sparkling wine are the same thing. But they're not. So champagne is a type of sparkling wine, but not all sparkling wine is champagne. And in fact, in many countries, including Canada, Mexico, the entire European Union, it's actually illegal for winemakers to say that their sparkling wine is champagne unless it is actually grown in Champagne. The United States is actually one of the very few exceptions to that. You actually can make, California champagne,
Hmm.
which doesn't come from Champagne, but that's not the case anywhere else. So part of what there are a few things that make champagne unique. And probably the first and foremost is the stringent rules that go into making the actual champagne. So whereas cava and prosecco from Spain and Italy, respectively, can often be a lot cheaper. One of the reasons they're cheaper is because in many cases they're not made by the méthode champenoise, the champagne method. In fact, they're made by, in some cases, injecting the sparkle into the bottle, basically, or injecting the sparkle into the giant vats with, I guess, carbon dioxide or whatever. But champagne's actually, the champagne method, which all champagne from Champagne is made with, involves actually putting the champagne to rest in bottles on their sides with yeast and sugar in there. And together those things create the bubbles, which is crazy. So it's a much longer, much more intricate process that results in a much more delicate, fizzy, kind of long-lasting bubble. It's a different bubble. Like if you pour a glass of champagne next to a glass of prosecco, it is a very different bubble rising up in the glass. Tiny, rapid bubbles as opposed to slightly larger, slower bubbles. It's very weird. Another difference is the grapes. So champagne generally uses a different combination of grapes. That I believe there are 8 grapes that can go into champagne, but the primary ones they use are Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier, I think is how you say it. And there are, again, 5 other varieties you can mix with, but those are kind of the 3 main ones. Whereas again, in Cava, it's a completely different grape. In Prosecco, it's a different grape. In wines from California, it's often a different grape. And finally, the actual grapes themselves are a little bit different because Champagne is a very northern growing region. So the climate there is colder than it is most other places that grow grapes for sparkling wine. And the soil is chalkier. So the grapes themselves, the actual grape juice is different because of the chalky soil and because of the colder climate. So I could go on and fill your heads with lots of nonsense, but that was probably that's probably all you need to know from me about the difference. But I think, I didn't know a lot about this before I started researching. And now I feel much more educated about why it is appropriate to spend a little bit more for a bottle of champagne.
Thank you.
You heard it here,
Thank you for
Kristin
the truth.
Harmel, champagne connoisseur.
The expert.
Something like that.
I do have another question. Marlene Waters would like to know, has your current book research pointed you to another country or topic as a World War II background? And then she said, wherever your books travel, I will be on board.
Oh,
That's so sweet. I actually saw that comment right before I came on today. I was on the page. I was like, oh, that's such a nice thing to say. So thank you. It's funny. All of my books lead to the next. I mean, it was while researching The Winemaker's Wife and the book before it, The Roman Rue Amélie, that I had the idea for the Book of Lost Names. I started thinking about foragers. So as some of you know, the book that's coming out this summer, The Forest of Vanishing Stars, is a little bit of a departure for me. It's not, I finally ventured out of France, and I'm writing about, I know it's weird. I'm writing about Eastern Poland, the deep, dark forests of Eastern Poland and how people survived within the forests, within the protection of the forests during the war. So it wasn't really the Book of Lost Names or one of my previous books that led me there, but it was reading about the resistance. I've become very interested in how people stood up and fought back, and some of the things that happened in that area of the world, particularly Jewish people who were persecuted there, perhaps more than anywhere else. The fact that they stood up and fought back against all the odds was so compelling to me. So, some of the research just in general, the resistance led me there. And look, Lisa's transformed. She's
We can't see your video, Lisa.
I don't know what just happened.
It's a nice picture.
I think it's the
liked it.
storm. I don't know.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's crazy. I was like, oh no, she's gone.
No,
but,
I was still here. I could still hear everything. Sorry. I was like, well,
I think she's just popping up glamour shots to just show us, like, look how good I look. Is that what it was, Lisa?
sure, we'll go with that.
Oh, that's funny. Can I pop in here with a question, because several of our readers, and I won't, I guess, quote one, but several were very interested. Of course, you have a pattern or a signature of doing World War II, just fascinating stories. And you mentioned that Anne Frank was very important to you in your childhood. Did it go forward from there, or was it an interest that developed later? Could you kind of go over that with us?
Yeah, you know what's interesting? One of the first short stories I ever wrote, seriously, like, I was writing little stories all along, like a lot of kids do. But I entered a short story in a contest in, I think it was 8th grade. It might have been 7th, but I think it was 8th. And it was about a girl in a concentration camp. Like, so that's, it's clearly something I've been really interested in for a long time. I've talked about this before. I think one of the things that interested me most and moved me most about reading the Diary of Anne Frank is that it let me know for the first time that you could change the world with books. I mean, prior to that, I thought books were for entertainment, but reading that book, I realized, gosh, like, words really have power. Stories have power. Like, you can change the way people think and how they go through their lives, even if you just change it a little bit by filling their heart with something new. That was the first time I realized sort of that the power I could maybe have one day as a writer. But I think I was always on that path, whether I knew it or not. In high school, I was working as a journalist later in high school, but one of the things I was proudest of in high school was I started an organization at my high school called Students Taking Action Against Racism, which we went to elementary schools and talked to kids about, like, why racism was wrong, and like why everybody, like why we're all each other's brothers and sisters, and you can't judge people or treat people, differently, or, whatever. Like, it was just kind of, that was something that was always really important to me. And I think that's the thread that runs from Anne Frank through my life until now. I mean, that's essentially what these books are talking about. Stand up, do the right thing. Don't turn your back on your fellow man. Like, we're all equal. Like, those are sort of these themes that have been a part of me since I was young, that I think never stopped being a part of me. But that said, I did detour. I mean, my first novels were chick lit novels, but that wasn't because the other stuff wasn't in my heart. It was because I really, really wanted to write books, and that's what I thought I was capable of writing. In retrospect, I wish I had tried. I wish I had tried this earlier. I just thought, like, oh, I'm 23. What do I know? I mean, I guess I know about dating, so I'll write about that. But, like, I wish I'd had the courage and the faith in myself to go down this road earlier, because I think it was where I was meant to be.
Oh, well, they're just beautifully done. And I guess what struck me as you were just talking about that is, you ask in Wednesday night Friends and Fiction, you ask the values of reading and writing in the family for the authors that you have as guests. And I'm just imagining, if you had not been exposed to Anne Frank, if you had not been exposed to books, the difference it would have made in your life. And because you were, look how you've been able to illuminate this period of time to so many other people.
Well, A, thank you so much for that compliment. And B, I mean, you're absolutely right. I think that's why it's so important to expose kids to reading early on. I mean, not just to make authors out of them, but books open worlds to people, and who knows what world a child will find in a book, fall in love with, and then follow down the path of life. It's kind of extraordinary to think of the impact that early influences can have on a life.
And I love it that y'all ask that question on Wednesday nights, because there's always something, some fascinating kernel to come out of that.
Well, of course, that was Patty's idea, as all good ideas are. Of course, I believe Patty came up with that
Oh my
one.
goodness, it must be Patty night.
It is Patty
didn't
night.
even
No
know.
one told me.
Okay, I'm sorry, Lisa. I hijacked the chat questions,
No.
but
I do have a question from the chat from Melanie Cantrell. She wants to know, have you thought about writing about the Japanese American internment camps in the US during World War II?
I would love to do that. I think it would be such an interesting thing to explore. And I'm not ruling it out. I think that my passion kind of lies in Europe right now. And it's I think partially because I lived in Paris for a little while. I think that's what drew me to writing about France initially. I've always felt a deep connection to that. But as I've kind of gone down these roads of research, I found out things about my own family that kind of go hand in hand with what I'm writing about. It's almost like I've written myself into the future, and it's led me back to the past. It's very weird, but
ooh, dual
so
timeline.
no, it's crazy. So in The Sweetness of Forgetting, for example, my first World War II book, which came out in 2012, the main character, the grandmother in the past, lives in my old apartment in Paris, which is in the 7th district, right near the Eiffel Tower. And it was after I wrote that book that I discovered that my great grandmother, my grandmother's mother, had actually lived just a few blocks from there in Paris in the 1920s. Or the late teens and early 20s. She had been a post World War II bride, a post World War I bride, but she was a young French woman who fell in love with an American soldier. But I had never known that, and we had literally been blocks apart. The book that came out this summer, The Forest of Vanishing Stars, I can't fully, or that's coming out this summer, I'm sorry. I can't fully explain what led me down that path other than just an interest in the resistance in Poland. But it was during the research of this book that my brother emailed me our family, our ancestry.com family tree. And the actual Harmels in my family, like I think their names were Rudolph and Rose Harmel, had come from that exact area of Poland. They were my Jewish ancestors from that exact area of Poland who came over 50 years before World War II started. So if they hadn't come to the States, that would have been my family in that forest at that time. I mean, it's crazy. So I think I feel this kind of deep connection in my blood or something to these stories that I'm telling right now. So that's a long answer to a short question. I apologize, but I certainly don't close the door on doing something like that in the future. But this is what feels like. It feels like I'm being led to write these stories right now, if that makes sense.
Wow.
And you write them so beautifully.
Thank you.
So beautifully.
Thank you. And I have to apologize. I was a fan.
I was a fan of your chick lit too.
I know you were. I know.
Blonde Theory. And
I can't believe it. I can't
I
believe you and I
have
have.
Blonde Theory. I think it's
Oh my gosh. Oh my
How
god.
to Sleep with the Movie Stars right there.
That is, I don't even know what to say. That's amazing. No, I'm just so grateful. Like Lisa, you've been such a, I don't even know what to say. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for you, and thank you for
You're
the
my
support all
favorite.
along. Well, you're my favorite. Thank you.
Well,
I was gonna say, sorry.
No,
Go
you go ahead.
I was just gonna say I have to apologize. I feel like I'm like all over the place tonight. I have been up since 6. No, even a little bit before 6. And I literally spent the entire day writing. I stopped at about 5:30 because I'm like, I probably should see my family at some point today. Ate dinner and then sat down right here. So I think my brain is just entirely shot. So I apologize if I'm.
Does that mean you're working on a new book?
I am. That's actually not what I was working on today, but I am just beginning to work on a new book that I haven't totally settled on yet. So it's a little early to talk about it, but it's another World War II. I can't seem to stop.
Oh, well, that is fine with us because
Yeah.
it makes everything so much more real, even though it's fiction. There are so many, so many locations, and the facts are so historically accurate that it's just
Thank you.
it's very educational. In addition to wonderful to read.
Well, thank you. That's so nice. I think World War II really resonates now. Kind of like Patty was saying about surviving Savannah. That message of how do we survive the surviving is very relevant now. But I think also that idea of finding light in the darkness, which kind of runs through a lot of World War II novels, is very relevant now too. I think that's why people are maybe connecting more than ever to those stories.
I found myself thinking a lot too about Celine after I read this book, and kind of wondering more, even though she was a fictional character, but wondering more about how someone goes through what she did. And
Yeah.
unlike some of the other characters, she knew all of that in the past and she just left it behind and had to rebuild from,
Yeah.
from nothing. And I think that's a big kind of lesson, in the book.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, of all the, I mean, Celine made some mistakes in this book too, but man, I feel bad about, the way I had to write Celine's life. That was yeah, and the things she faced were difficult, and that whole idea of having to start over with nothing. You're absolutely right. To me, that's a, I feel like that's a storyline type I keep coming back to, the idea of starting over. But I think that does resonate. I think all of us in life have to start over at some point to varying degrees. And I think it's about how you build that path in front of you without entirely letting go of the past.
Wow. Lisa, do we have more questions or comments in the chat? I know we've kind of been all over the place
Yes.
tonight too, so
I know.
but we've had so many
Well,
things we wanted to cover about. I feel like we need 2 or 3 hours, but
I know. I know. Well, I did want to we didn't give the spoiler warning at 7:30, but we haven't said any spoilers yet. But the next question or two might produce a spoiler. So I wanted to give the spoiler alert warning.
Perfect. Okay.
so get your volume button ready.
Yeah.
Those who haven't finished.
Well, one of the questions that a lot of people want to know is I'm trying to say it without, I don't know how spoilery you want to get, Kristin. So
It's
just,
hey, if you want me to, I mean, we've told
okay.
them it's okay, whatever.
We've given warning.
Yeah. Okay, you've
fair
given warning.
fair warning, everybody.
So the twist at the end with Edith and Ines.
Yeah.
How did you know that was going to happen the whole time? I know for me, when I read in the book that Ines was shot, I was like, because it was telling us, it was in the
Yes.
present day of what had happened. And I kept the build up of, oh my gosh, she's going to die. And then the whole entire switch, like, it just blew my mind. Like, this will stick with me
Oh, that's
for so long.
awesome. Oh,
Just,
good.
just like the Book of Lost Names, just something I'll
Oh,
never forget.
thank
But
you.
how did you come to that and make that decision to have her take on that identity?
That's a really good question. I did not know it at the beginning of the outline because, Brenda, like you said, I always outline, very thoroughly. I'm a big plotter rather than a pantster. I did not know it when I started the outline, but the more this character of Grandma Edith just kind of came to me, and she was feisty and
Uh,
liked her martinis, and
I love her.
but she was strong and tough, but I think you could tell from the beginning, or at least I could tell from the beginning of writing her, that there was a lot of pain there too. Like it was toughness to protect something soft inside, if that made sense, or if that makes sense, and maybe drinking to protect what was the I think a lot of who she was based on um hiding from this person that she was at the core, and these things that she regretted. So I think I had the character of Grandma Edith sort of fully in my head before it just was like, well, obviously that's who it is. Now how do I get there? So and I don't really remember putting those pieces together. I just remember that, like, once I knew, and there was like no other way to do it. And then the question became, how does it all come together at the end, and how do we get a happy ending, or is there a happy ending, or can you find triumph out of the tragedy, or can you find some goodness at the end of this story? And so that was my challenge, to find the light in the darkness there, because there was especially as that story in the past concludes, it's a very dark, very sad story. And I needed a way to make it right, but it still was kind of a sad ending, especially for Inez. I mean, she spent her whole life hiding and regretting, and yes, she made a tremendous mistake, but she didn't make it out of cruelty or evil. She made it out of impetuous selfishness. And do you deserve to pay your entire life for something like that? I mean, it's a lot of complicated moral questions. It was an interesting thing to dive into and explore.
It was, and oh, I'm sorry, Lisa.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and yet, even as sad as it was, as a reader reading the end of the story, there is a sense of peace about the ending. So that was something that I came away with.
Well, thank you. I like that idea of stories are in real life. Your stories are never tied up neatly. The ends are never all tied in perfect bows. There are always loose ends. There are always things that feel incomplete. There are always regrets. But I think life, not just in books, but in real life too, life is about finding the happiness, finding the bright side, finding the good from the bad. And when I can do that in a book, it feels very satisfying too.
Have you thought about revisiting those characters, like another book with Liv and Julian?
I have so much respect for people like Christy and Mary Alice, who write these long series that just go on, and the characters are, have these continuing storylines, and there's always something new that's a compelling story to tell. I don't think I know how to do that yet. And I think part of it is that I tend to tell stories that go back and forth between the past and the present. And when you've wrapped up the past and wrapped up the present, it's kind of hard to figure out where to go. I could see myself writing a short story, maybe one day, that if there were ever an occasion to, that tackled something that happened in the middle, like off screen. Like, I would love to know more about exactly what Celine and Michelle did for the resistance. Like, we see a little bit of it, but it wasn't the main story. So, that would be interesting to see more of. But instead of envisioning this as like a book that would have a sequel, I would love to envision it as like a television series, right? That where these could be some of the characters, but we would get to see other people in Champagne too. And like the series aspect would be how all of the lives intertwine, not just these lives we see in the story. But I don't think I'm good at I can't imagine that I would be good at the sequel thing. I mean, never say never, but it doesn't feel right to me yet.
Gotcha. Well, your characters are so rich, so we're all like, oh, we want more.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much.
But
one quick question, a couple. Oh, sorry, Brenda.
No, go ahead.
One quick question a couple of people want to know is, what's the name of the champagne you're drinking right now?
I think that it's Philippe Prier, which is a one of those ones that I got from WTSO that I mentioned. So the WTSO, it stands for Wines Till Sold Out, and it's like a weird sales model. You have to buy, I think, 4 bottles at once, even if you've never tasted it. So if you get a bad one, you're kind of stuck. But the shipping's free, the prices are low. I think it's just how they're unloading like overstocks. It's basically like overstock.com except for bottles. But that was one that I got a few months ago that I think I ordered like 4 bottles of. I did one reorder and now they're completely out of it forever. So kind of sad, but there'll be another new one to discover. But I am drinking out of a Piper Heidsieck glass, which, Lisa, this might look familiar to you because you and I were at a party in Atlanta 12 years ago, I guess, for The Art of French Kissing, which was my 2009 book, I think. And that book
Yeah,
tour was
I think
sponsored
so.
by Piper Heidsieck, and they gave me these glasses. They poured like these were the glasses that we used on the book tour, and so I still have like a dozen of them. It's what I drink champagne out
That is
of.
so cool.
So
Well,
this
I
goes
think
back
we're
to when
both
I knew you.
holding.
That's
I think
crazy.
we're
Yes,
both
we are, I
holding those
think.
glasses in the picture.
You'll
That's
have
too
to
funny.
have you shared that, Lisa, on the Friends and Fiction page yet? That picture? I mean, I know I saw it on our
I I shared it on the book club page,
Oh, good.
but I
Okay.
don't think I've shared it on the Friends and Fiction page. I'll
Okay,
share it
but
on
at
there.
least okay, perfect. But at least it's on the book club page so people can see
Yeah,
it. Yeah, yeah. When we were both 29 and,
yeah,
looking exactly as we do now.
exactly the same.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness, we're almost out of
Oh,
I
time.
know,
it
I
was so
can't
much
believe it.
fun. Oh, but this has been so great. I don't want to be out of time.
I know.
What else do you have for me, ladies?
Well, we would like to ask you to do just a quick preview of your upcoming novel, as in upcoming, as in about to be released, The Forest of Vanishing Stars. Could you share a little bit of that with us?
So wait, you're making me do two book descriptions tonight, following Patty's glorious scene setting. You guys are so mean. What? This is terrible. Yeah, so the Forest of Vanishing Stars, which I will not describe as well as Patty described her book. I don't have my pitch down yet. But the Forest of Vanishing Stars, like I said, takes place in Eastern Europe. It's actually Belarus in the present day, but during World War II, it was in Poland. So it's about a young woman who was kidnapped from her German parents when she was a very young child. She was kidnapped by this kind of crazy lady who felt that she'd been called to Berlin by these voices in the forest that had, told her to take this child. So she has this grand plan for her life, but she never really knows what it is and never really reveals it. So she raises her in the depths of this forest. All by herself, and raises her to know things like how to, 100 ways to kill people, or all of the herbs that you can find in the forest that heal, that hurt, that harm, how to ice fish in the winter, how to find food when there is none, like just all of these things that she would need for survival. So by the time she's in her early 20s and the crazy lady dies, she's been alone all these years. She's had very little exposure to the outside world. She has no idea what's going on in the world outside the forest, except she's been told mankind is bad. You have to stay in the forest. You have to protect yourself. But then one day she encounters this little girl who's fleeing. She's just running through the forest. She's emaciated. She's bloody. She trips and she falls and hits her head. And Yona, the main character, has this moment of, what do I do? I've always been told that people are dangerous, but this is a child. How could this child be dangerous? So she goes to help, and this opens up this whole world to her because it's 1942, and she suddenly realizes, in talking to this little girl and in helping her find her family, everything that's happening outside of the forest. Because in this particular area of Poland, the forest was surrounded by towns that had these horrific Jewish ghettos where people were being murdered constantly. I mean, it was horrible. So the forest kind of begins to fill with people fleeing the Nazis, and Yona is faced with a choice. Does she step up and help these people and change her life forever, or does she retreat back to safety? And of course, she steps up and becomes a part of helping them, a part of their world, and in turn, it opens her world up and kind of makes her, as much as she's teaching them about survival, they're teaching her about basically being a human being. And all is well and good until she's betrayed and flees into an occupied town, and her present suddenly collides with her past, and things kind of go crazy. So that's kind of the premise of the book. But it was based, the refugees in the forest were based very loosely on real life stories of fugitives or I'm sorry, not fugitives, refugees in the forests of Eastern Poland during World War II. There's a 2008 movie called Defiance, which stars Daniel Craig. If you've never seen it, you should. It's a great movie. But it's about
Yeah.
this real life group called the Bielski Otriad. The Bielski brothers were these four Polish brothers who set up camp in the woods and ultimately recruited and helped save over 1,200 Jews who hid for the duration of the war in the forest. They set up a society. They had guards. They had a hospital. They had ways to get food. They had ways to protect themselves. They had a school. They had a rabbi. It was just crazy. But they saved 1,200 Jews this way. It's an astounding story. And the group in the book is not that group, but some of the ways they survive are based on the way that group survived. And so one of the things I was able to do for this book, which was such a great honor, was to interview the youngest and the only surviving Bielski brother, who's 93. He lives in Florida. And he talked so beautifully and so powerfully about not just the physical act of survival, but the emotional act of survival and what it means to him today, to have done all that and to have been a part of that and to have survived the war the way he did. So it was a really emotional, powerful book for me to write. And even though I didn't say it as well as Patty did, that's the book. So.
Oh,
Yes, you did. I cannot
yes,
wait.
you did. Just amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, Kristin, we want to thank you so much for your time tonight and spending it with us, the book club members, to talk about The Winemaker's Wife. It was just delightful to read.
Well, I was so happy to be here, and I'm so grateful that you chose it, and so grateful to both of you for everything you're doing, and to everyone watching out there for for how active and engaged and supportive you've all been. It means so much to me, and it means so much to all 5 of us friends and fiction authors. And I know there are a lot of questions we didn't get to, but I will come onto the page tomorrow, the next day, throughout this week, and try to get to everything. I promise. I might not be able to do it all tomorrow, but I will do it. I promise. It's important to me. We'll get to it.
It's just fabulous that we've loved the content that you've added that gives some more, history and explanation to The Winemaker's Wife. For our readers, though, I want to say, be sure to tune in Wednesday night on the main Friends in Fiction page or the YouTube channel when the Friends in Fiction authors welcome Susan Meissner, author of The Nature of Fragile Things, and Greer McAllister, The Arctic Fury. Our next book discussion will be March 15th at 7 p.m. Eastern, where we'll discuss the book club with Mary Alice Monroe. And we'll have another pop-in that Patty started tonight. Christy will be dropping in to preview Under the Southern Sky,
which is also so good.
Yes, very excited about that one too. Lisa, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Yes. If you want to pre-order any of the Fab Fives books, you can do it from the bookseller of the week, which is Warwick's in Southern California. You can visit them in person or online to get your hands on any of the books. You get a 10% discount if you use the code Warwick's Friends, I believe.
Oh, okay. I'm not sure.
But
right? You know what? I know it's pinned to the top of the Friends
yes,
and Fiction
you
page.
can find the code on the Friends and Fiction page. And we are so looking forward to the Forest of Vanishing Stars. You can pre-order that tonight if you like. And we had a great way to kick off Friends and Fiction Sweeps Week.
I'm so excited. It's going to be such a great week. I'm so
excited. So many fun things coming up. So we will see you all week. You can join us. Well, you'll join Friends and Fiction on Wednesday. And then Thursday, if you were able to do book bingo, it's sold out now. So there's no more tickets available. But that is at 7 p.m. Eastern time.
And
then Friday night.
I actually think they have more tickets available, but they're out of the free tickets. I think they have about 20 left of the ticket with book purchase.
Oh,
okay.
So just if anyone is dying to go and it's worth it to them to buy a book, you would get a free ticket, but only I think there's only 20 of those left. So
I'm there for the bingo.
Good. I looked earlier, it said sold out, and I was like, oh no, it's sold out. So that's good. There are some available.
Yeah.
And then Friday, you can join us. Me and Brenda will be hosting Ron Block for a fun happy hour. We'll discuss book recommendations for Black History Month, as well as anticipated books coming out this year. And you better believe that The Forest of Vanishing Stars is definitely on our list.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Cheers to you all.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Kristen.
Cheers
Thank
to
you,
all.
Kristen.
Thank you
Cheers.
all so much. I really appreciate it.
We
Good night,
appreciate
everybody.
you.
Take care. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye. Thank you.